You know how when you're on the plane and you're bleary-eyed and you have this screen in your face that doesn't shut off, and they're trying to get you to swipe it the whole time? And it was really, really late, and we were on our way here, and we got into Lubbock very, very late, and I was trying to order my thoughts for my talk on challah, on the bread, and I was so distracted, wanting it to be off, very technologically impaired, not sitting near my husband on the plane, and it was just on. And so at one point, I glanced up, and I saw it was just like subtitles, and it said, "It would be great if human beings were great at being human." And then I got why it was on, because that's exactly what I am trying to talk about. And I was so thankful to Hashem that I got that message. So today, as I said, God willing, we will talk about the commandment of challah. There is a chart in your pamphlets there about the 24 priestly gifts. The challah, the dough, the bread, the portion that we set aside, is one of the 24 priestly gifts. And at your leisure, you could look at that list and see what they are and who eats them and where. Today, we are going to focus on the challah itself. So, we understand that every single one of Hashem's commandments is something for us to do because Hashem gives it over for us to do, and that's enough. At the same time, the pursuit of the knowledge of Hashem, the depth of what Hashem has given us here in this world, sends us to look deeper into the mitzvot, the commandments. We don't do them because they appeal or don't appeal, as my husband was talking about the offerings, but we do them because we are hopefully trying to be servants of Hashem. But this does not, we are not limited. We are to ask questions. We are to dig deeper. We are trying to understand with our limited human minds more and more so that our relationship with Hashem can become richer and richer. So we want to explore today how the commandment of challah connects to the manna, the Garden of Eden, the spies, the temple, and us for all generations. We are going to try to thread that together. So firstly, another page that you have are the sources, the Tanakh sources for the commandment of challah. So the first source is in Numbers 15, verses 17 through 21. Hashem spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, when you come to the land which I am bringing you, and when you eat from the bread of the land, you shall set aside an elevated portion, a truma." Truma literally means to raise up, for Hashem. "From the first portion of your dough you shall set aside a loaf as an elevated portion for Hashem. Like the portion of the threshing floor, you shall set it aside, lift it up. From the first portion of your dough you shall elevate a portion to Hashem for all your generations." We also see, and you could look at it later, in Nehemiah and in Ezekiel and in Malachi and in Tractate Shabbat. These are all references, all sources for the commandment of challah. In Malachi, it says, and again, the English does not give us what we are looking for in the understanding. It's translated, and it's a good translation. "Should a person steal from Elohim as you are stealing from me?" And it goes on. But the word there is not at all stealing. The root that they're using is a word keva. Keva. And it's a very unexpected word choice because it's never used for stealing, but yet that's the understanding that we are given. Rather, keva means routine. Routine. The prophet is saying, you are making your relationship with me routine, mundane, rote. And that was the issue, and we will see why Challah, the mitzvah of Challah, is the opposite of that. So now we know the incident of the spies, directly after the incident of the spies, the nation of Israel is given the commandment of Challah, and in Numbers, and of course, we ask ourselves why then, because we know the Torah is not chronological, never has been chronological. Sometimes it works out there's chronology there, but as we said last night, since it is not a history book, there's nothing chronological going on. That means verses that are together, ideas that are together, have a purpose to them. There is a reason for this. So, and as we said, the words have a reason for them, the word choices. When the nation of Israel is given the commandment of Challah, the word there is bivo'achem, when you come into the land. And it is not as it is used in other places in the Torah, ki tavo, when you come into the land. Now, this is subtle, but it makes a very, very big difference. Ki tavo, which is not used here, but it is used elsewhere, talking about when you come, wherever you're going. Over here, it's bivo'achem. The expression is much more of a certainty. It will happen. Why? Because the nation of Israel was devastated. They had just been on the verge of entering the land, and now there is going to be a 40-year wait. It's on pause. And those that participated in the debacle of the spies are not going to enter the land, but their children will. The history will continue, certainly. But at that broken moment, Hashem is trying to comfort and reassure a very demoralized and terrified nation that there will indeed be a future for them. But aside from infusing this demoralized people with an assurance that their history will continue in the land as promised, there is another reason, perhaps the deeper side of what is going on here. Now, and when we go back to the spies, and we see in chapter 13:28, when they come back with their report, they went off course in their retelling of what was going on with one word, ephes in Hebrew, ephes. Ephes is translated as but. And we know today whenever we're in any dialogue with somebody, when the word but comes in, we know that we're not going to like the next thing. It's where it goes wrong. So that, yes, that is a true translation for sure, but ephes has another meaning, and in modern Hebrew as well. Ephes means zero. Zero, the exact word. There's other ways to say but, aval. There are other ways to say but the Torah gives us ephes, meaning zero, because what the spies were saying. Now remember, these were giants of men. We've discussed this. We shared it in the past together. But what the spies were saying was, yes, the land of Israel is intrinsically holy. We know that there is holiness there, but there is zero chance for us human beings to access holiness in a material lifestyle. Because we know they were coming from the Exodus experience, which was totally miraculous, from the Sinai revelation, which was unspeakable and an event that could never be duplicated. They were coming from that miraculous place, being spoon-fed miracles, being coming to some sort of understanding that a elevated spiritual experience has to be with flashing lights and angels humming in the background. But that is the very opposite of what means to be a human being with Hashem in this world. So as we will explore together, the mitzvah of Challah was the answer to the spies, that not only is it possible, but it is something that we are commanded to do. We can extract the divine. We can pierce through the layers and come to it in this material world. So it was a direct answer that we can, with human intervention. We are not sitting back and waiting for the miracles, but with human intervention, we can indeed access that holiness, that sanctity, and bring it into our lives. Now, the first thing I want to say about Challah is there's a huge difference between the commandment of setting aside a piece of the dough and the other tithes and the different agricultural laws pertaining to the sabbatical year and other things. A vast difference. Challah went into effect the second the nation's feet touched the ground in the land of Canaan. The very second, that's the manna ended and the mitzvah, the commandment of Challah, began at that very moment. All the tithes, all the agricultural laws, those went into effect only after the conquering and the settling of the land. So that is the first major difference. The second major difference, all the tithes and all the different agricultural laws of setting aside something for the poor, etc., this all was from the raw material. And it was from the raw material rather than, as we see in the mitzvah of Challah. With the mitzvah of Challah is needed and is observed only when and after the dough has been kneaded and mixed. Only with human intervention, the hand of a human being has gathered it all together and made the wheat or the other grains into something else. There is another difference. The other tithes and portions are only taken from that which is grown in the land of Israel. That means a Torah-observant Jew living in the diaspora does not set aside from the fruits and vegetables because that were grown in the diaspora. It only pertains to the land of Israel. This is a difference here that any wheat, rye, spelt, oat, or barley, those are the grains that the mitzvah, the commandment of Challah, fall upon. Even if they were grown outside the land but kneaded into a dough in the land, there is the commandment of Challah. Now, of course, diaspora Jewry does observe this commandment, but it is not. It's not a Torah law. It is something that has been taken on to the diaspora Jewry so they do not forget this whole concept. But the law of taking challah, the portion of dough, is only in the land. Okay, so the size of the challah dough, if we have a little piece of dough, and we set aside a portion, there is no blessing made on this. It is not enough. It's very, very interesting. We will not get into the details of the law so much. I would rather help us together to explore the underpinnings, the spiritual underpinnings of what Hashem is commanding us here so that we could deeply, deeply appreciate what's going on. But it's interesting to note that the different scholarly opinions and slight differences based on the development of the different rabbinical authority throughout the generations, the range of where we actually take a piece of the dough off with a blessing ranges from 1.5 kilos to 2.2 kilos, which is fascinating because it is the exact amount This was the amount that of a manna per person per day. So that's interesting. We're going to see that the challah replaces the manna. Now, as Yitzchak said, and as I said last night, everything begins in the garden, and we cannot possibly study the word of Hashem and what He wants from us as human beings without going back to the garden, because that was Hashem's, as it was, vision for what a perfected human life can be in this world. So if we go back to Genesis, we will see in Genesis 1:11, Hashem commanded that the earth put forth fruit, a fruit tree, and let's look at it exactly. God said, let the earth sprout vegetation. Okay, I'm going to go to the Hebrew. It's not good. Okay, here we go. We want to be exact here. Vayomer Elokim tachia aretz desha esav masriya zera etz pri oseh pri. The command was that there should be a fruit tree bearing fruit. But when we go to the very next verse, 12, and it says, and the earth, put out etz oseh pri, a tree bearing fruit. That is not what Hashem asked for. That is not what is written here. It's written, Hashem commanded, put out a fruit tree that bears fruit. Go back to it, you'll see it. And rather, the earth sprouted something different, a fruit-bearing tree. And what is the subtle difference here? The original commandment was that the tree, the bark, the leaves should all taste like the fruit. P.S. There was no non-fruit-bearing tree before Adam and Chava ate from the tree. P.S. So the tree was to be a total reflection of its purpose. The fruit, the leaves, the bark, that's what was supposed to happen. But instead, the earth put forth something a bit different. The entire tree was not a reflection of its purpose. There was a bit of independence there. And the truth is, we as human beings, we know Hashem created us from that very earth. But Hashem knew that somehow, again, these are deep concepts to understand. These are not literal, okay? We have to be very, very careful. This is not some sort of fairy tale, the understandings of what are going on here. So Hashem chose to create us with the earth as our main building block, with a material that chose to assert its independence, its uniqueness, and its individuality, rather than a material that did exactly robotically what Hashem commanded. Now, the fact that Hashem chose to create us this way, to make us the stuff of something so vastly conflicted, set into motion the fact that conflict must happen between what we want for ourselves and what Hashem wants for us. It's embedded into our DNA, literally. Now, the thing is, this is not negative. This is not negative. This is not negative at all. There was a reason that Hashem put it into motion this way. Hashem chose to give us a self. Hashem chose to give us a self because we need ambition. We need opinions. We have a drive to leave our signature on the world because Hashem wants us to be involved with the world. He wants us to partner Him in creation. And if we were passively, only simply, without free choice, reflections of His will, we would be contributing nothing. We would be working nothing. So He wants us to be involved with this world, and He put us in this world, and the clash gives us free will. Without that clash, we do not have free will. It is only a totally passive relationship with Hashem. So the conflict itself, the striving, the struggling, the independent will, allows us to have a precious relationship with Hashem. So if we go to Genesis 2, verses 6 and 7, we see, a mist ascended from the earth and watered the whole surface of the soil. And Hashem, God, formed the man of dust from the ground, and he blew into his nostrils the soul of life, and man became a living being. This is where we get the recipe for challah from. This is what is going on. Hashem, as it were, took the earth from the four corners of the universe, blended it with water, and breathed into it Hashem's divine spirit that gave our souls to us, that gave us the ability to be human beings in the most perfected way. And the word used is that Hashem yatzar, he created. Yatzar, it means created, but those of you who study Hebrew might hear the word yetzer there, inclination. Hashem didn't mess up. He chose the earth. So you could say, like my husband has taught on other occasions, a set-up of sorts, somehow having us have the need to be independent, to be in conflict, to struggle with Hashem's will. Hashem embedded that into us. So therefore, it wasn't a mistake, and therefore having the conflict and being human and struggling is not a bad thing. It's not a flaw. It's a benefit. It's potential. It's hope for reflecting our humanness in the most elevated way. So the oral tradition actually says in as many words that ha'adam, again, the joint male-female creation that was joined together and then separated apart in chapter 2 of Genesis. We've studied this together before, but they're only called ha'adam when male-female together is one, was created, and the oral tradition says that ha'adam is the challah of the universe. So when we understand this, we already immediately being taken deeper into our story. So it says like this. Let me try. Does this work? Is this working? Okay. I don't know if these are working though. Ha'adam le-nefesh, I will translate, chaya. So this means mankind, ha'adam, the male, female together, le-nefesh, to a being, chaya, a living being, chet, lamed, hey, challah. That is how we see our first reference to mankind being the dough, as it were, of humanity. But what is challah? We still do not really know what this means for us. Now, bear with me. I'm going to erase something here. And we're going to do one more thing, if we can. Now, we know that mankind is created from Adamah, right? Adamah, we know Adamah means earth. So this is Adamah. Aleph, I'm sorry if it's unclear because the eraser and the pen don't work great, but we're trying to manage. Okay. Adamah. Okay. And now I'm writing another word. Or so it may not seem. Adamah. But it's the same word. No, it's not.
Here we go. Adama. Adama means earth, dirt, the earth. Okay? Adame means to be like. Because the very earth that Hashem created us with, this duality, is a gift. This is not our flaw as human beings. This is not a problem. Rather, the very earth that we are created from gives us in our ability, our conflict and our ability for free choice, so that we can become true likenesses of Hashem, meaning revealing and finding the tselem, the divine image within ourselves. Adameh, we can be like Hashem, the attributes. We can behave as He wants us to behave, and in that way reflect godliness. So Hashem expects us to take this material stuff that He made us of and elevate it. Elevate it to something more, because embedded in there, far from our regular vision, if we're not looking, it doesn't look like there's anything there. So Hashem gives us an opportunity to elevate His creation, to elevate the material world. He gives us, it's a gift, but it's a responsibility that, and as I've shared before, but it's just so powerful, I don't want to not include this verse in chapter 2 of Genesis, which so much reflects the mission of mankind. So chapter 2 says, "And now all the trees of the field were not yet on the earth, and the herb of the field had not yet sprouted, for Hashem had not set rain upon the earth, and there was no man to work the soil." Question mark. This is chapter 2 of Genesis. So why does it say that there was not yet plants? That's crazy, because we know it was all created. The idea was that Hashem set it into limbo. It was ready, set, and the go only happened when mankind entered the picture to pray for rain, to interact upon the creation and participate and work the creation. And so mankind ignited, as it were, the creation. So if we know that all souls are part of this original Ha'adam, and that means all souls are commanded to transform and elevate the material reality, our environment, ourselves, our choices, to one of higher purpose. And as my husband said, the two prime ideas about what the tree of knowledge was, wheat or grapes. And so we make kiddush on the grapes, and we take challah, the prime grain, wheat. Although we can, as I said, from the 5 grains. Now, this is very interesting. It was not the eating from the tree of knowledge that caused the problems at all. It was the premature eating of the tree of knowledge. Because as some of you may be aware of, and as the oral tradition teaches us, Hashem set Adam into the garden and told him not to eat from the tree. But the oral tradition says he was not to eat from the tree until Shabbat. Until Shabbat. It was a premature eating from the tree, and that is what caused the problems. And as we've been discussing the past 2 days, that not all places, not all times are the same. So the premature eating without the sanctity of Shabbat pulled mankind closer to matter when he ate from the tree without the context, the spiritual elevation, the surrounding Shabbat to help him digest it properly. So, and on the day, as Hashem said, on the day that you will eat from the tree. It says, Mot Tamut. Mot Tamut, chapter 2, verse 17. Mot Tamut. It doesn't say Mot Yumat, you will surely die. Mot Tamut, you will die. You will be mortal. There was never any game here about zapping us. And as we always have said together that, punishment, the Jewish understanding of punishment is not like this Old Testament God with a long beard and an angry face waiting around the corner for us to fall. That is not at all what the Torah teaches. I don't even know where that comes from, but certainly not from Torah ideology. And the idea is that we get what we do. As the spies didn't want to go into the land, they didn't go into the land. Hashem wasn't punishing them, it was a consequence that they created and brought into motion. So here too we see that because Ha'adam brought mankind pulled the knowledge to the material plane, the body, which is material, became damaged, and the body, which is material, which was the vessel to contain the soul, was cracked. And as the soul gains power, the body could no longer support this indefinitely, and so therefore it could not house the soul immortally. So that's what's going on with Mot Tamut. You will die at some point when your soul outgrows your body, because the body is now pulled to the more material. So what happened was the eating then made it impossible for Adam and Chava to function in the garden, and they were not able to be on that same plane because they changed their DNA structure, as it were, to something else, and therefore they needed a different way to interact and interface with Hashem to create the Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden experience, to get back to Gan Eden. So they were, everything that happened to them was about tikkun, was about rectification, as we said, natural consequences. My husband spoke about it too, about getting out of the brokenness, the stuckness, the choices that were detrimental to us. And because the women were introduced as Ezer Kenegdo, a helpmate opposed to him, in chapter 3, verse 18, a helpmate opposed to him. Ezer in Hebrew is a helper. A helper not in the connotation of the second in command. Ezer is the helper, a guide, as it were, a spiritual guide to lead Ha'adam, to lead mankind on the path that they are to go on. So now we understand that what might have appeared on one level of thought, because there are many levels, we know the Torah has many multiple as we go deeper and deeper into the interpretation. So if we refer to one interpretation, the oral tradition is deeper and deeper and deeper. So on a very interesting interpretation, which maybe you have not thought about, if womankind was supposed to be the spiritual guide and she gave him the fruit prematurely, when Adam says his response in 3:12, in 3:12, when he says, "The woman that you gave me," this is not something obnoxious. This is, I don't get it. That's the directional signal. I'm really confused now. And so now we shift a little bit. We shift a little bit in understanding what's going on that scene. So the commandment of Challah was given primarily to women for two reasons. One begins in Gan Eden, because it was given, even though men can certainly do the mitzvah and they can certainly make the blessing, but it is traditionally a woman's mitzvah. But the rectification was given because she, who was to guide humanity closer to rectification and messed up, was now, and he and she being the Challah of the universe, she is now, with Hashem's love, given the capacity to now take the challah with the intention, and as we will learn deeper, deeper, and deeper, we will see what she is doing there to restore the challah of the universe, which is mankind. And if we, in your sheet also, there are blessings that a Jewish woman says when she is taking the challah, and you could look at it again at your leisure, but in the blessing, which is quoted from Ezekiel 44:30, there is something called Reshit Arisatchem. You will see, you'll look at it later, the first of your dough, it's translated. But what's very, very interesting, Reshit, of course, Bireshit, in the beginning. Reshit means the beginning. Bireshit, in the beginning. Reshit, the beginning of your dough. Another little hint that the story of the challah goes back to our purpose in this world. Arisatchem, which is translated as dough, but an unusual translation that Ezekiel is using here to use the word dough. Arisa, even in modern Hebrew, means a cradle. Arisa, arisatchem, your cradles. The beginning of your cradle, again, taking us back to the cradle of civilization, literally, to where we were. The challah is somehow going to lead us back, with Hashem's help, to that. Okay, so when we are studying here, the idea of challah, which we are seeing more and more, is to reveal and elevate the spiritual potential in an earthly existence. Because in a nutshell, that is what it means to be a living being, walking and interacting and being in relationships and making choices and living in communities in this world. So living in the garden, living with Hashem, means to be elevating reality. And again, the temple being on the spot of the creation of mankind to elevate the reality. And actually, when a woman makes the blessing over the challah and she takes the piece away, she actually, with two hands, she takes the piece and she lifts it up. And she actually says, this is the terumah, this is the elevation. So these are all very significant illusions, symbolism, reminders about what we are to be doing in this physical world. So we are not mammals, as my husband was teaching so aptly. We are not mammals. We were given the temple as a focal point to remind us of that and to remind us that there is something else. We are not going on instinct alone. There is something else that we can accomplish in this lifetime. So the relationship with Hashem is about the tselem, the divine image that He imprinted in us when He blew life into us, and making us responsible to partner Him in creation, to remind us about our potential to transform ourselves. But the thing is that women were given this mitzvah for another reason. The women did not succumb to the sin of the spies. The women were apart, not in a part, apart from this, as they were from the sin of the calves. And as you know, after the sin of the spies, the men got the commandment of tzitzit. And progressive women sometimes are upset that women don't wear tzitzit. Tzitzit is not our topic today, but the fringes, these are sort of roots that help men anchor in perception-wise so they don't forget again. But the women did not get those eyeglasses because their perception wasn't off. They got challah again at that time because they really got it. See, the first idea we're talking about is the opportunity for rectifying the mess up, relearning the lesson, taking humanity back to where we're supposed to be. The second time this commandment is given over to women, as it were, because we see it in the oral, we're not seeing it here, we have to learn this together, is after the sin of the spies. And this is because they really got it. They got the message, and they did not stumble at that time. They understood that, what did the spies say? We cannot extricate the holiness. We cannot access it. And what is dough? You take a lump, a sticky lump of the most base material matter, and in there is an elevation. You take it and you lift it up. You take it and you make it a whole new thing. You reveal through our actions that matter has more than meets the eye when we look for it. Again, everything is about the looking, you know. Looking. I always say it's one of my favorite verses of King David in Psalm 27. If I did not believe, I would not see a living God in this. I would not see a God in this living world, Be'eretz HaChaim. Because it's not seeing is believing, it's believing is seeing. Believing is when you believe it and you're looking for something, it comes to you onto your radar. So the potential of creation is dormant until mankind interacts with it, the dough. We're not taking the wheat, it's dormant. We have to interface with creation. We have to act upon creation. We have to partner Hashem in creation. And only then can the illumination of Hashem shine forth. He allows us to be his partners. This is mind-boggling. He allows us to and wants us to. And in the finite bodies that we are now functioning from within. So the challah, if we do not see challah and do challah in the deepest sense, the bread will sustain our body, but we transform it into something that nourishes our soul. It's far more than our body. So I want to do one more thing here on the board, if I may. Hang on. So let's look at the word challah together for a moment and see what else we could come up with. So the word challah is spelled chet, lamed, goes way up, I have no more room, hey. Okay, now chet is also in in gematria, when each letter has a numerical value. Chet is 8. 8 always stands for beyond nature. That's why circumcision is beyond nature, etc. Hanukkah is beyond nature. And all the things that are beyond nature are very, very interesting. They are not miracles in the simplest sense of miracles. They are actually interfacing and contributing to Hashem's creation. So Chet, the number 8, symbolizes that 7 days, because on Shabbat Hashem rested, but there was something about that rest, which in a way, even though it wasn't a creation, it was a newness brought on. 8 is beyond the 7 days. Lamed, again, without going into too many details about the letters, we know this letter stretches and reaches high. Hey is actually a dalid and a yud. When a hey is written in the Torah, it actually looks more like this. A yud and a dalid, like that. That's what a hey is in the Torah. Dalid, the 4 corners of the universe. Yud, the infusion of Hashem into the 4 corners of the universe. We're making a doorway for entering to this universe, to the finite universe, godliness, and therefore making it a out-of-world experience in this world. Now, there's other things about challah. We have, again, challah. So we have, separating out, chet, lamed, and hey. Now we have chol. I will explain these words. We have choli. We have chal. Okay, and we have Chal Hashem. So we're doing something very interesting with the challah. This is the dough. It's nothing by itself. As a matter of fact, the root, chal, was the same root as chol. Chol means mundane, the opposite of spiritual. It also shares the same root as choli, illness. Illness is about the absence of something on a spiritual imbalance. So we have this matter, and it's mundane, and it is imbalanced. We do something to it. We intervene, as it were, with the created matter. We are proactive in viewing and creating change in the created matter. Chal means to rest upon. We bring something else to rest upon the matter, and we get Chal Hashem. Hashem rests upon the matter when we live up to what it means to be the Challah of the universe, as of course embodied by the mitzvah of Challah. Now, okay, so again, Hashem is telling us that we transform creation by being human beings in this world. Of course, the tabernacle, the Mishkan, of course, Mishkan means lishachen, to rest, or to be a neighbor of, to come and join. It, of course, is the same root as Shekhinah, the divine image. The divine image. And, of course, the Shekhinah is feminine. We know that God is neither male or female, and we've discussed this. There are times when Hashem is referred to in the masculine and times when Hashem is referred to in the feminine, because Hashem is not a human being. So the Shekhinah is a feminine name for Hashem. So basically, when the whole tent of meeting, the tabernacle, the Mishkan, basically Hashem is encouraging us to go beyond the illusion of a confined material existence, and the entering into a relationship with Hashem with a focal point in the place that He chooses is what makes this more easily accessible to us, more clear to us. So when we approach our relationships and opportunities with the intention of seeking the divine, we will find it here. So again, if we go back to Numbers 15, 19 and 20, I'm going to read it in Hebrew because it's, where is it? Excuse me. 19 and 20, as follows. I'm going to read it in Hebrew first because I just want you to listen, okay? Listen, and it will jump out at you. Here we go. V'haya ba'achlechem milechem haaretz tarimu truma laHashem. Reshit arisatchem, like we said, the prophet says it, and again we see it, of course, this being the source, the first, the back to the cradle, right? Tarimu truma laHashem. Tarimu truma kitrumat hagoren tarimu. Mereshit arisatchem titnu laHashem tarimu ledorotechem. 7 raises up. The word is used 7 times. We finished saying yesterday that Torah is so brief. There are 7 days in the creative process, including Shabbat, which rest was, as it were, created. Now, 7, that's the natural order of creation. 8 begins with the chet of Challah. So we are being enjoined by Hashem using this word tarimu, which means to elevate, 7 times. We are taking every piece of the created matter, every part of our lives. Torah observance is very the theme running throughout all of Hashem's commandments, a Torah way of life, is that we do not departmentalize. Every single aspect of humanity has sanctity, barring none. Every single aspect of humanity is elevated and sanctified when we approach it with the divine image inside of us. So Hashem is saying here, with the repetition, go out of your boundaries using your boundaries. Go out of your boundaries using your boundaries. Widen your perspective. Hashem rests in this world through our actions. Through our actions. So we as human beings are set up to ignite this potential. That's why he breathed into us. Because Hashem believes that we can, more than we believe in him, as it were. He actually believes in us. So he says we can raise ourselves up and we can catapult our lives into activism, being active participants according to Hashem's guidelines, not our intellect, Hashem's guidelines, to make the physical world a heavenly experience. So I want to thank you all again so much, and looking forward to Shabbat when we'll get to discuss more together, God willing. So I wish everybody a good break for now.